"You can't do this." The voice crackled, the sound distorted through the transmission. "It goes against everything we stand for." Dr. Elara Morn, a brilliant and unyielding scientist, stood in the darkened control room of her ship, the stars glimmering outside the observation window. Her fingers hovered over the console, poised to push the final command. She could feel the weight of the universe on her shoulders, an overwhelming pressure, but also an exhilarating rush. "Watch me," she whispered, before pressing the button. Across the galaxy, on the barren world of Xeros, a dead planet with no history of life, a pulse of energy surged through the lifeless atmosphere. The planet, once a desolate rock floating in the vast expanse of space, began to tremble as if awakening from a centuries-long slumber. "You've crossed a line." The voice persisted, now louder, more urgent. It was Lior, her colleague, her oldest friend, someone who had stood by her side in the early days. But that was before her obsession had taken root. "It's done, Lior," Elara responded, her voice calm but resolute. "I've given it life." The planet's surface rippled. The barren dust that had settled in the valleys and mountains was disturbed for the first time in eons. As the energy pulse coursed through the crust, something miraculous happened. Seeds, tiny, organic, bioluminescent cells, began to sprout from the ground, creating new life from nothing. Elara could feel the power of her creation hum through the air, and her heart raced with excitement. For years, she had dreamed of this moment, the ability to resurrect a planet, to breathe life into the most desolate place imaginable. But she hadn't expected what came next. As her mind swirled with the potential of her success, a strange, foreign voice echoed in her mind. "You did not ask for permission, human." Elara froze. Her hands went rigid, her breath catching in her throat. The voice wasn't coming through the transmission. It wasn't even coming through the ship's communication system. This voice was in her head. It was no longer just the voice of Lior, nor was it an automatic system glitch. It was someone else, something alien. She turned to the ship's monitors, frantically searching for any sign of interference or a malfunction. But nothing appeared on the system. Her heartbeat was the only sound in the control room now. "You have awoken us," the voice continued, now more forceful. "The Nexus is not yours to control." The voice wasn't human. The resonance was deeper, richer, echoing from a place far beyond her understanding. She tried to focus, to steady her thoughts, but the voice's tone was unsettling, unnerving. It wasn't angry, nor was it fearful. It was something else, something ancient, something powerful. "Who are you?" she managed to say, her voice trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. The reply was like a slow, deliberate pulse in her mind, each word vibrating like the hum of an ancient machine. "We are the guardians of Xeros. You have disturbed the balance. What you have done cannot be undone." Elara felt a chill run down her spine. Guardians? Xeros was dead. It had no life. There was nothing on the planet except dust and ruin. What could these beings be? And why were they speaking to her now, when she had given Xeros what it had long since lost? On the surface of Xeros, beneath the newly sprouted tendrils of life, something shifted in the shadows. The ground rumbled again, this time not from the energy pulse, but from the stirrings of the beings who had remained dormant for millennia. From deep beneath the planet's crust, the Guardians were awakening. Somewhere far away in the stars, the Council of Elders, an intergalactic race of scholars and warriors, stood in a vast, holographic chamber, their translucent skin shimmering in the artificial light. They were ancient beings, their civilization dating back to the beginning of the universe itself. They had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, and they understood the laws that governed all life. The Elders were watching Elara's transmission closely. The image flickered, showing her standing in her control room, her face a mix of awe and fear. The pulse from Xeros was visible now on their monitors, small, almost invisible at first, but growing. It was undeniable. Elara Morn, one of the Elders, spoke, their voice a resonating hum that echoed in the chamber. "She has defied the natural order. The balance is disrupted. The Nexus must not awaken." Another Elder, his face long and angular, nodded gravely. We warned her. We warned all of them. But she could not hear. Now there is no turning back. Back on Xeros, Elara felt her heart pound against her chest. As the planet continued to vibrate with the pulse of her creation, she suddenly felt an overwhelming presence around her, like 1,000 eyes watching her every move. And then, before she could react, the ground beneath her began to crack open. From the depths of the planet, massive, alien figures began to emerge. They were tall, their skin a shimmering silver blue that seemed to reflect the entire sky, their features angular and impossible to describe. They moved with an eerie, otherworldly grace, neither human nor animal, but something far beyond. Elara's breath caught in her throat. These were the Guardians. The beings stepped toward her, their eyes glowing faintly with an intelligence far older than any human had ever known. One of them spoke. "You have given life, but you have also invited destruction." She opened her mouth to protest, to explain that she had only sought to bring hope to the barren planet. But the words caught in her throat as she felt a wave of energy wash over her, as if the very air had turned thick with unseen forces. "You have violated the laws of nature," the voice continued, and Elara could feel the power of it reverberate deep within her. "Life is not to be forced into existence. Not like this." A heavy silence fell between them, and in that moment, Elara knew that nothing in her life had prepared her for what was about to unfold. The silence that hung in the air was suffocating. Elara stood frozen in place, her eyes wide as the towering Guardians approached her. They moved with an unsettling fluidity, each step creating ripples in the air, their forms pulsating with an unearthly glow. Elara's mind raced. She had done what no one had ever dared to do. She had brought life to a dead world, a feat that had been thought impossible. But now, she realized the magnitude of her actions. She had defied not just the laws of nature, but something far greater, something beyond her comprehension. "You have made a grave mistake, human," the largest of the Guardians said, his voice deep and resonant. The sound vibrated through her chest, like a distant thunderclap. Elara felt her pulse quicken. She had no idea who, or what, these beings were, but the weight of their presence was undeniable. She had disturbed something ancient, something powerful, and now they were here. "I didn't mean to." "You did not mean to?" the Guardian interrupted. "Did you not understand the consequences of your actions? You cannot simply create life without understanding the balance it disrupts. The Nexus is not a tool for the likes of you." The word Nexus echoed in her mind like a warning bell. Elara had heard rumors of such a force, a mysterious and ancient power that existed across galaxies, but she had never imagined it would be tied to the creation of life itself. "The Nexus is the lifeblood of the universe," the Guardian continued, his glowing eyes narrowing. "It is a force older than time itself, and you have tampered with it. The life you have brought into being is a disruption. It is an anomaly that must be erased." Elara's heart sank. She had created life, but now she realized that she had played with forces she didn't fully understand. Could she undo what she had done? Was it even possible? It is too late," the Guardian interrupted again. "The Nexus has already responded to your interference. The life you have created will not simply vanish. It will spread, it will grow. And with it, the consequences of your folly will follow." Elara took a step back, her mind spinning. She had known the risks. There was no such thing as an untainted experiment. But this was something far greater than she had ever imagined. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter as he raised a hand, his fingers glowing with a strange, energy-like substance. "We will give you one chance, human," he said, his voice resonating deep within her mind. "You will come with us. You will learn the true purpose of the Nexus and the price of tampering with it. If you do not, the consequences will be irreversible, not just for you, but for the entire universe." Elara's heart pounded in her chest. The Guardians weren't just angry. They were offering her a chance to understand something ancient and powerful, something that, until now, had been beyond the reach of humankind. "But I can't," she stammered, shaking her head. "I've already caused too much damage." I can't. I can't undo this. The Guardian's gaze softened, his glowing eyes dimming ever so slightly. You may not be able to undo it, but you can learn. You can understand what you have unleashed. Meanwhile, light years away, across the galaxy, the Council of Elders was in turmoil. The transmission they had intercepted from Xeros had sent shockwaves throughout their ranks. They had known that a human had crossed into dangerous territory, but they hadn't anticipated the scale of what had happened. Elara's actions had set off a chain of events that could not be contained. She has done the unthinkable. One of the elders spoke, his voice a low hum, barely audible in the vast chamber. His translucent form shimmered with tension. The Nexus is not something we can control, nor can we allow it to fall into the hands of beings who do not understand its purpose. We must intervene, another elder said, their voice trembling with a mix of fear and urgency. If she succeeds, the consequences will ripple across every dimension. The council was split. Some of the elders believed that Elara's curiosity could be harnessed, that perhaps she could learn to use the Nexus for good. Others believed she was far too dangerous, and that her experiments must be stopped before they escalated any further. We are not here to judge, the eldest among them spoke, his voice calm yet carrying the weight of centuries. We are here to protect the balance. The Nexus must be contained. We cannot allow a single being to hold that kind of power. Back on Xeros, Elara's decision was made. The Guardians, despite their warnings, had offered her a path forward. It wasn't a promise of redemption or an easy solution. It was an opportunity to understand the forces she had disturbed, to learn from the Nexus itself. But as Elara prepared to leave Xeros, something unexpected happened. The life she had created, the seeds, the new plants, the first signs of flourishing, began to change. The once static forms of life were now evolving rapidly, growing at an unnatural speed. They were responding to the energy that had been released, reshaping themselves in ways that defied natural logic. What have I done? Elara whispered to herself, her voice full of dread. The Guardians watched in silence as the world around them shifted. The once barren planet was no longer recognizable. New ecosystems were springing up, some alien to her mind, others more familiar, but all increasingly unpredictable. What had begun as a spark of life had turned into something far more complex, far more uncontrollable. And in the shadows of Xeros, something else stirred, something that Elara had never intended to create. A new form of intelligence, one that was not human nor alien. Something born of the Nexus itself. As Elara stared out into the chaos unfolding before her eyes, she realized with a sickening clarity that the life she had given Xeros was no longer under her control. What had started as an experiment to resurrect the planet had quickly spiraled into an uncontrollable force. The Nexus, a power far older than any human or alien race, had responded in a way she couldn't possibly have anticipated. You have awakened something new, one of the Guardians said, his voice devoid of emotion. His words felt like a cold wind cutting through her. The Nexus never allowed life on Xeros for a reason. It is not a place for creation, but for destruction. The ground trembled beneath her feet again. But this time, it wasn't just the pulse of energy that shook the planet. The air itself seemed to warp and twist as new forms of life grew, alive, yet alien in their structure. Some were plant-like, but with a malleability that seemed unnatural, bending in ways that defied biology. Others were more complex, their bodies moving as if they were in sync with the planet's energy, forming intricate patterns and structures that defied all known principles of physics. Elara watched in horror as the first of these new beings rose from the ground. It wasn't an animal or a plant. It was something else entirely, an entity born from the Nexus, a new life form that seemed to exist solely for the purpose of expanding, evolving, and adapting to the planet's energy. Its form was fluid, its shape constantly shifting, growing as if the very fabric of the universe was bending around it. And then, without warning, it spoke. You are not welcome here, human. The voice was deep, resonant, unlike anything Elara had ever heard before. It wasn't coming from one place, but from everywhere. Inside her mind, outside her body, all around her. It was as though the planet itself was speaking through this new form of life, a manifestation of the Nexus's power. Elara stumbled backward, her legs shaking. This was no mere creation. This was the very essence of the Nexus, alive, intelligent, and filled with purpose. You did not understand what you were unleashing, the being continued. The Nexus is not meant to be tampered with. It is not a force to be bent to the will of any one race. The Guardians stood silent, their glowing eyes focused on the creature, their expressions unreadable. Elara could sense their unease. They had never anticipated this either. The life she had given Xeros had evolved in a way that was beyond anyone's comprehension, including the Guardians who had watched over the planet for millennia. I didn't mean to," Elara stammered, her voice shaking with regret. "I just wanted to bring life to this world." The being's form twisted, elongating as it floated closer to her, its presence overwhelming. Life on Xeros was never meant to return. It was never meant to evolve. You have disturbed the balance, and for that, there will be consequences. Elara's heart pounded in her chest. She had known there would be risks, but nothing had prepared her for this. Nothing could have prepared her for the consequences of disrupting the Nexus. "What can I do?" she whispered, her voice filled with desperation. "I didn't mean to cause harm. I just wanted to make the world better." The being paused, as if considering her words. And then, in a voice that sounded almost compassionate, it spoke again. "The Nexus is not evil, human, but it is not a force to be taken lightly. It is the pulse of creation and destruction, a power that transcends life as you know it. You were not ready for it." Elara's breath caught in her throat. She had always thought of herself as a pioneer, someone who pushed the boundaries of science and knowledge. But now, she was nothing more than a child playing with fire, an insignificant human who had woken forces far beyond her comprehension. "There is a way," the being continued, "but it will come at a cost. You can undo what you have done, but you will have to give up your connection to this world, to this Nexus. You will never be able to interact with it again. The power you have awakened will be sealed." Elara's mind raced. The choice was clear. She could restore balance, undo her creation, and prevent further chaos. But it meant sacrificing everything, the dreams she had worked toward, the legacy she had hoped to leave behind. It meant erasing her very connection to the life she had brought into being. For a moment, she considered the consequences. The Guardians had warned her, and now the Nexus itself was offering her a way out, a chance to prevent further destruction. But at what cost? "What happens if I refuse?" she asked, her voice trembling. The creature's shape morphed, its eyes glowing brighter. "If you refuse, the consequences will ripple beyond this planet. The Nexus will spread, consuming everything in its path. The universe itself will be changed." Elara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had already caused so much harm. Could she live with the consequences of refusing the Nexus's offer? Could she live with the destruction she might bring upon the universe? No, she couldn't. With a heavy heart, Elara nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I accept." The being raised its hand, and Elara felt a surge of energy wash over her. The ground trembled once again, but this time, it was different. This time, the energy was being drawn back into the planet, as if the very life force she had awakened was being returned to its slumber. The Nexus, in all its power, began to seal itself away. As the last of the energy faded, the world of Xeros fell silent. The plants stopped growing. The new life forms, those that had evolved from the Nexus, faded back into the ground, returning to the lifeless state it had once been in. And then, in the stillness, the being spoke one final time. "You have chosen wisely, human. The Nexus is now sealed. The balance has been restored." Elara stood alone on the planet's surface, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. She had undone what she had started, but at what cost? Her dream of bringing life to Xeros was gone, erased by her own hand. But in the silence, she found something else, peace. She had made a choice, and though it had been difficult, it had been the right one. The universe, for now, was safe. Months later, Elara found herself back in the quiet solitude of her lab, reflecting on the events that had transpired. The Nexus had been sealed, its power contained, but she had paid a heavy price. Her connection to the forces of creation and destruction was gone, severed forever. But she knew one thing for certain. Some forces were too great for any one being to control. She had learned that lesson the hard way. As she looked out into the stars, Elara knew that the universe was full of mysteries, some meant to be understood, others meant to remain untouched. And for now, she was content to simply observe, no longer an architect of life, but a humble student of the cosmos.